This is your brain. This is your brain after watching the Not Too Stuffy Law Show. Any questions?
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Not Too Stuffy Law Show. I'm your host, attorney Justin St. James. For the next half hour, we hope to entertain, inform, and enlighten you. And if we don't, you should probably be watching Judge Judy. I'd like to welcome our studio audience. Boy, the government is taking over everything. In this show, we take a trip to Concord, New Hampshire and visit the University of New Hampshire School of Law. UNH Law School was originally founded as the Franklin Pierce Law Center. We wanted to find out what actually happens in the law school admissions process. The school's Assistant Dean for Admissions, Katie McDonald, graciously met with us and explained what considerations applicants should make before applying to law school. Take me through the process. A completed application comes to the school. It goes to the mailroom, comes here, whatever. What happens to it next? Where does it go first? Where does it go second? Where does it go third?
Well, interestingly, and I would say this over the past 3 to 5 years, almost 100% of our applications now are delivered electronically. That is, an applicant goes into the Law School Admission Council website, finds University of New Hampshire School of Law application, fills it out electronically, so whatever information they have is now, if they spell their name wrong, we're going to spell it wrong for the rest of their lives unless they correct it.
On a diploma.
Yeah. And then they're going to attach resume, essay. Recommendations come in through this central processing unit at the Law School Admission Council, so that Professor Smith may be writing an application for John Doe, but John Doe wants him to write a recommendation for 7 different schools. Professor Smith doesn't have to write 7 discrete letters of recommendation. He can write 1 letter of recommendation, make it generic, and then that letter of recommendation will be delivered to each of the schools that John Doe is applying to. Great in terms of efficiency. It's very nice that way. So the data from their application, including the resume, essay, their recommendations, their law school, their undergraduate transcripts, are delivered to us electronically, and we have a database that receives all that information. Then each week, sometimes each day during a certain period, we will assign a member of our admissions committee to review this application. That process can take, a reviewer might have the application up to 2 weeks to review it.
Now, can that applicant be rejected by that first reader?
Yes.
So if the first line of defense says, not even worth looking at, then that rejection letter goes right out.
Not necessarily. I still review everybody. Okay. I will review the reviewer's comments. Okay. And if I think that they are well-grounded, and I'm looking at the person's, undergraduate record in a cursory way, LSAT, and I'm thinking, gee, I think there might be some promise here that reviewer did not see, I will send it out to a second reviewer.
Okay, so say it gets past the first reader, then that goes on to a second reader?
Yes.
And then can that person accept, or does that second reader have to? That
second reader has an independent review and can either agree with the first reader or disagree with the second reader.
So it's almost a judiciary. You have your district court, you have your appellate court, and then you have your Supreme Court in Massachusetts anyway. All right, so and then if you have 2 yeses, then that person's in?
It still comes back to me.
You have the final word.
Yeah, it still comes back to me.
So if 2 people have said yes, and then it comes to Katie McDonald's desk, and you go, guys, what were you thinking? And that person will be rejected.
And that does happen. Well, what I'm more likely to do is to take it to committee. Okay. Now, our admissions committee is made up of faculty members and senior staff members of the school community. There are probably, I think there are 10 people on our committee. We meet every other week, and we will take a look at special cases. A special case might be somebody who has had either mixed review Might be someone who has a criminal record that we are willing to live with, but we're not sure of. And we discuss an academic record that we might be willing to live with, but we're not sure of. There are some criminal records, for instance, that we won't consider. You know, they don't even make it to committee. You know, if there's a crime of violence, of personal violence, we're not going to consider that applicant. If there's a long string of DUIs, we're probably not even going to consider that. But we will certainly read the application.
So when you get an application, and when you look at, is it the thought process then isn't so much, is this candidate going to be a good student? The thought process is this candidate going to be a good attorney?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because if you're not going to be a good student, if you can't vouch for being the good student, then you're not going to make it to pass the bar to be the lawyer. So we have to take that into account. So first we have to say, are you going to be a good student? But the next thing is, we can see you acing everything, but being highly unethical, having bad judgment, you know, and being beyond the point where you're going to learn how to do that. And that will be somebody we deny, despite the fact that they might have been a very, very good student. The other part has to apply. And that's in the school's mission as well, that we are here to train lawyers.
If I were a college student today, what would be a good major to, I mean, in law school, to get to medical school, you don't really need a major. You just need chemistry, you need biology, calculus, physics, maybe a couple of more courses. There really is, there's a pre-law curriculum, but I mean, what else do you look at? Engineering majors, nursing majors?
Yeah, and it's a very good question, because some people think that you need some sort of background and that there is a pre-designed road to go to get to law school, and that is, nothing could be further from the truth. In our incoming class of 132 students, for instance, this year, there are 39 different majors, and they range from art history to electrical engineering. This school does see a lot of electrical engineers and mechanical engineers and civil because of its IP expertise. However, history majors, I'm trying to think of some interesting ones, aviation and aeronautics, certainly art history, certainly political science. English is our biggest major this year. Normally it's political science, but it is English this year. Gender studies. We get a lot of, there are criminal justice students. There are every major. Our advice to students is select something, a major that you love, and do well in it. It is not, one major is not going to qualify you more than any other major. It's going to be, we're going to review what you took and how well you did in it. If we were to advise someone specifically on courses, we would say take courses that you are required to read and to analyze and to write about that. Writing is probably the single most important skill that you will develop.
That was my next question, because the essay I always have trouble with, and I imagine maybe other people do as well, is why do you want to come here? What experiences are you looking for at this law school? Like, I don't know what they and the thing is, we're always told to write for your audience, but who's the audience?
Who's the audience?
And so, and especially if someone who has a hard time, like I actually do have a hard time tooting my own horn. Like, I'm probably the last person to talk about my accomplishments. And it's just hard for me to say, well, I'm wonderful doing this, 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 this. So what would make a good exercise?
Yeah, and I wish that more people would ask this question more, and maybe talk to people at the school, because different schools are looking for different things. We are looking for, and we leave, that question is wide open so that you can choose to write about anything you want. We direct people to say, to write about things that have been important to them, experiences that have had an impact on their lives, things that have made them stop and think. Has there been anything in your life that has changed your course, or made you think more deeply, or mature more than you might have? Something like that. We're not looking for creative writing experiences. You know, we're not looking for your description of the blooming sunflowers in, you know, southern Italy. We're looking for something about you. And we hear the word, I'm passionate about such and such. you know, that's a very hackneyed term and has lost its meaning. Meaningful is a much more useful word, I think, and useful direction. You don't have to be passionate about anything. You're only 21 years old. So, you know, and you haven't had a lot of life experience.
Most 21-year-olds are passionate about a lot
about
of things.
Everything. Oh, about everything. That's exactly right.
Everything's a crisis, so.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's good. So it's hard to weed out what's, you know, what's useful there. So you're writing to people who are not going to be, they are not going to be shocked by anything you tell them. Anything. We have read it all. And you have to write with correct grammar. And we are shocked and amazed at the low level of attention to detail that many people give their essay. And if people think that this essay is a throwaway in the application process, they are dead wrong, because an essay tells us a great deal. And many of them are sloppily written and with a lot of really annoying errors. And I can tell you that when I'm reading a stack of 10 applications at 5 a.m., I don't have a lot of patience for incorrect grammar and misspellings and just sloppy sentence construction. So pay attention to those little things, because it has some impact on your application.
Do you do a Google search?
Frequently.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but frequently.
Yes, not everyone. Whatever is in the public domain, we figure is, you know, we should be using that information. We don't often find much. I will say that we have found some things, but you often don't find much.
And do you share information with other admissions officers?
No, everything's confidential to us.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about some big issues and challenges that we're meeting, but we won't talk about individuals. We certainly won't give away any identities, because we hold the federal policies of privacy.
Do the children of alumni get special treatment?
We look at every candidate individually, and I would say as a general policy, no. There's no special consideration given. We look at it in terms of what's the likelihood of this person applying here and then going here, and that may have some impact on how we treat the application. But
if it's between someone who's the son or daughter of an alumnus and someone who isn't, and the applications are, it's a horse race, it's a close call, wouldn't you give it to the person who's has a family history here?
It might have some bearing, but it would be really tiny. But sometimes that tiny will tip the scale. So but it's hard for me to say yes, because that's not where we start.
You mentioned about interviewing. You might call someone in for an interview. Why don't law schools, medical schools, give interviews?
Yes.
Why don't law schools give standard interviews?
For one thing, there are many, many more applicants to law schools than there are to medical
Really?
schools. Many, many, many more, yeah. We interview a dozen candidates a year, and it's only those students whom we have more questions about. Our hope, our expectation is if you have something to tell us, you're going to write about it in your application.
Should there be psychological testing? Should an applicant be required to get out there, get examined by a psychologist or psychiatrist, and then have that report sent to you? I mean, wouldn't that tell you more in detail about the person's makeup?
You know, I believe every bit of information you get on a person tells you more about that person. Yeah.
But in terms of character?
Yes. In the law world, there is something that happens on the post-law school level, and that is the State Bar Association gets involved in a person's application to a state bar. The state bar,
about the MPRE?
The MPRE,
For those who don't know, the Massachusetts the multi-state professional responsibility exam.
Yeah.
Supposedly it's an ethics exam. Wink, wink.
It gets at something, and
it means you know the rules.
It means you know
the rules. It doesn't mean you won't break the rules, but just means you know the rules.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And then, of course, there are recommendations when you apply to a state bar association.
I see two challenges with it. The first is, if everyone had to put in a psychological profile, then you wouldn't have any law students. no one would pass. And the second is that, well, who gets to do the testing? I mean, who's to say that the people who are doing the testing are
Yes.
have a good judgment. That
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're never sure that the testing is going to line up with the skill set that you're trying to advance.
So talking about testing, why is the LSAT so important?
Yeah, well, I think that it's going to be hard. It's always hard to defend the LSAT 100%. It's absolutely flawed. Here's the value of the LSAT from my perspective. There are 3,000 undergraduate universities or colleges in the United States, and many more beyond this country. Grading policies, academic rigor, challenge is 3,000 different models. And the LSAT is a standardized test so that we see it all the time. University A has a median grade point average of 3.6. University B has a median grade point average of 2.8. That alone doesn't tell you anything because University A, everyone, the students going there could be performing at a certain level, or they could, it could be
The grading could be harder.
it could, right. And that's in this very state we have those disparities. So the LSAT is kind of another measure to say we can't tell how logical reasoning was imposed on these students in University A in an academic year, and we can't tell University B. Let's try to neutralize that somehow.
Okay.
And I think that does help us understand, the value of, or it moderates the grade point average, which we can't look at alone. That being said, the LSAT isn't everything. We all know that there are very successful practitioners who don't take standardized tests very well.
You're looking at one.
Yeah, it happens
You're
all
looking
the
at
time.
one.
We know that. What we hope is that there will be other attributes that will contribute to helping us understand what makes a good practitioner. So we can look at a moderate LSAT, for instance, but we want to be sure that the undergraduate experience was a strong one to know, is there any hope here? We certainly get students who have low LSATs, low GPAs, and tell us what a great person they are. And they are great people, but they might not be academically inclined.
But I'm glad you said that, but isn't attitude more important than intelligence?
I don't think I can answer that. I think it's equally important. There is a point where learning something will come a lot easier if there's innate intelligence there. That it's going to be much more difficult for somebody to take on some concepts if they don't have the academic rigor to attack a very, very new way of thinking, of studying. Law school is challenging for many, many successful undergraduate students because it's a new way of thinking.
Sure. And again, I usually don't talk about myself, but as myself as an example, again, I just mentioned that I don't test well on standardized exams. I found law school, I didn't find it, I'm not saying this to brag, I just didn't find it intellectually challenging. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I compared it to digging a ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you put the dirt over there, sometimes you have to throw the dirt over there. But and for law schools, they would look at me and say, well, your standardized tests are terrible, we're not going to take you. But then I got to law school, I was fine. I mean, there was just,
it happens
there's
a lot.
no problem with it.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That's, to me, it just seems like a dichotomy. It's like, well,
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
There is, and especially again over the last 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, we've all grappled with this monster out there called the U.S. News World Report.
I was going to ask you about that, but yeah, go ahead. The rankings you're talking about.
The rankings. Yeah. And U.S. News, about 20 years ago, started this rankings methodology that takes certain attributes that apply to school. It's like a dashboard of indicators, and scores every school. 200 law schools, they score every school. And where you end up on U.S. News and World Report ranking has become
almost a Bible. It's almost, they consider it, you know.
That is correct.
That's the last word. And so, you know, admissions people probably feel about the U.S. News and World Report rankings as law students do feel about the LSAT.
Yes.
It's probably the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
And it's taking, you know, in the same way that the LSAT thinks that this is important for predicting law school success, it is more important. We can know from correlation studies from that are done regarding LSAT. LSAT is more useful in predicting law school success than GPA is. We know that. But still, it's not necessarily predicting who you are as a lawyer. Mm-hmm. You know, it might say predict what kind of grade you get in law school, but does that automatically predict your ability as an attorney? Not necessarily. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of other things in there.
Are there too many lawyers?
I think you'd have to ask a non-admissions person that, okay. Because it's not something that I have to deal with on a daily basis. I don't consider myself an expert in the practice of law nor the profession, the law profession.
And yet, University of New Hampshire Law, they have a low student-teacher ratio. It's 14 students?
14 students, 14 per faculty.
That's pretty good. It's
very
small.
good. It's one of the best in the country. Yeah.
And one of the smallest.
Yeah. We're one of the smallest law schools in the country.
Yes.
And because our total belief is that environment will create a better learning environment for our students. And we strive to maintain that.
Mm. What is it about, not necessarily UNH, but from what you've seen in general, what is it about the law school admission process that could be improved? If you had a magic wand, you said, gee, I've been in this for 9 years.
Yeah.
If only we could do this, and you could touch your magic.
And I think you brought it up earlier. I think if we could meet everybody who's applying, that would really help us out a lot. Because then we'd have an idea of who the future in the profession's going to be. What I'd love to be able to do is to meet somebody across from me, and with the idea that I am a client seeking legal assistance in some way. Mm-hmm. I want to know how that person's going to relate to me and communicate with me and have an understanding of, you know, certainly what you do in research, and a lawyer does in research and in responsibility and making sure that all the ends are tied up. That's one set of skills. But the other set of skills is relating to the client and helping the client to live a better life. I want to be able to view that applicant that way.
You can make that an essay.
And we hope we do make it. It's part of the essay, yes.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It could be.
All right.
And we suggest that as part of something like that, as part of the essay.
What makes, and we talked about the rankings by the U.S. News and World Report. Also, Princeton has a ranking, doesn't it?
Oh, there are
tons
hundreds.
There are hundreds of rankings. The guy down the block has a ranking.
Right.
But what makes a Yale Law School a Yale Law School? What makes Stanford Stanford? What makes University of New Hampshire University of New Hampshire? And I guess my question is it the quality of the teachers? Is it the starting salaries of the graduates? Is it the alumni? Is it the connections outside of law school?
Yeah, or the football team.
The football team.
Yeah.
You should have a football team.
Well,
have a law school football.
The fact that Yale has been around for close to 300 years, you know, means that it has had a lot of time to build up. Certainly, its alumni network, and its reputation. It's the number of members of the National Academy of Sciences and Nobel winners. Those are all very, very important. And sometimes that's what reputation is built on. Sometimes it is the football team.
Really?
There's one school, law school, that experienced a 20% increase in applications in 1 year, and there was not a national increase that year, so they were really quite an anomaly. But that was the year that this one school was the Cinderella team in the NBA
and that helped their law school admissions?
basketball. Yes,
Really?
Despite the fact that this law school is located approximately 20 to 30 miles away from the university, students have it in their mind. Oh yeah, that's right.
It's branding.
So branding. So the term, the idea of branding, and we're facing it with the younger generation, the upcoming, the maturing millennials now, because they are seen as a brand-seeking, purchasing age cohort. And if they have heard your name or someone has spoken to you about them, or you have this image, then you're golden. So we're very concerned about that, because we will have many students who will apply to Harvard, Yale, and Duke because they've heard of those schools in their young years. In this school, University of New Hampshire School of Law, formerly Franklin Pierce Law Center, is world-renowned for its intellectual property program. We have an array of courses in patents, trademarks, and copyrights that is unequaled. And any school in the world can show its course listings, and nothing will come close to the array of courses we have. Yet, so if you want to study IP, this would be an obvious top choice. But there are students who say, oh, I want to study IP, but I'm going to go to XYZ school because they say they have an IP program. And if you look at the course arrangement, you'll see that there are 2 courses that are related to patents. In other words, you can proclaim anything you want, but if you're a small school, and I'm not complaining, I'm simply, this is the trend. If you're unheard of, and formerly we've been a small independent school. We've only recently affiliated with the University of New Hampshire, a much larger entity. If applicants don't do their digging down to find out the real facts, ask the real questions, they're not going to get it just by what they hear on the street.
I know you're a long-distance runner. What else do law admissions officers do to blow off steam? We're on the road a great deal during the fall, especially. A lot of us like to go home at the end of our recruiting season and do nothing. We like to sit and read a book. No, not quite couch potatoes.
And then during the winter, we're reading files, truly morning, noon, and night. That we read. What we really love to do when that season is over, or say Sunday afternoon comes around, is read, a trashy novel or something unrelated, something fictional, because you're reading so much really real life experience.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Justin. It's been very nice to talk to you.
And if you want to learn more about the University of New Hampshire School of Law or have questions about the admissions process, you may call the school at 603-228-9217. Their website is law.unh.edu. As we always do, we leave you with the beautiful music of the equally beautiful Sarah Melson. You may find Sarah's music on Amazon, iTunes, iLike, eMusic, Facebook, MySpace, and of course, sarahmelson.com. The name of this song is Happy Endings. Until next time, I hope all of your endings will be happy endings. I'll see you then.
I guess I just never realized how badly I needed to be surprised. You kissed me with your eyes, that's then I knew. Now I'm 1,000 miles away, waiting for the first light of day. And the way I'm feeling is oh so new. And I believe in happy endings, and I only see the good in you. And I believe the world is worth mending. I think that you do too. I know that you're an optimist. You're pretty impossible to resist. And I know